Sadness and outrage tonight after another school shooting in America.
Good afternoon, this is News 2, and we're following a breaking story today, a shooting at a high school in Littleton, Colorado.
There's word potentially multiple children have been killed. This happened at the Robb Elementary School in the Uvalde Consolidated Independent School District.
2012 Colorado movie theater massacre.
7 bodies were discovered in Oklahoma.
Mosques in Christchurch were targeted, the country's worst mass shooting ever.
Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. I'm very sorry for the increased delay since the last video. I worked on and posted a long video that unfortunately was taken down, so that's why there's such a large gap. I'm continuing to try to find more time in my day to work on these videos, but it's been pretty busy lately. Thank you all for being understanding, and I really hope you enjoy today's case. Justin Bork was born on November 12, 1989, and was one of 7 siblings. His family was tight-knit and were dedicated to their religion as Roman Catholics. Bork's father worked 2 jobs during his upbringing, while his mom was in charge of homeschooling all 7 children. By all accounts, the Bork family's life was considered idyllic. Growing up, Bork was described as shy and awkward, but also by some as being a funny kid. He reportedly did hilarious impressions of celebrities and was even described as a really big comedian by his close friends. One friend of Bork that met him in his late teens described him as extremely safe when it came to firearms. "I've gone shooting with him, and he was the safest person with a weapon," said the friend. "If you were not safe handling his weapon, you were never handling his weapon again." Bork was, by all accounts, a genuine and loyal friend growing up. He continued to live with his parents up until 18 months prior to the shooting. He moved out of their home and into a trailer park located in Moncton's Ryder Park neighborhood. This move was reportedly not Bork's decision. He was apparently forced to move out by his parents following an argument between them. His parents did not approve of him purchasing a second firearm, and also disputed with him about his, quote, inappropriate behavior. During this time in his life, Bork had recently quit his job at a local grocery store, but had just gotten a job at Raleigh's Wholesale, which was a distribution warehouse. Fast forwarding to the events of this video, at around 6 p.m. on June 4, 2014, Bork was with a friend. The two of them had plans to go to a shooting range later that night. Because of these plans, his friend obviously didn't find it weird when Bork purchased 3 boxes of ammunition. Later that day, Bork left his home dressed in camouflage and carrying an M14 rifle, as well as a shotgun. He calmly walked down one of the roads running throughout the trailer park, passing several of his neighbors on his way. The first 911 call came in at about 7:18 p.m. The caller told the operator that there was an armed man walking down Pioneer Avenue, heading towards the nearby woods. 12 RCMP officers responded to this call, setting up a perimeter around the woods and surrounding neighborhood. Constable Mathieu Daigle was the first to spot Bork as he stepped out of the woods, before he crossed a street and entered the forest again on the other side. Daigle radioed the description of Bork to the other officers that were nearby. But due to poor sound quality because of static, the description was difficult to understand for the other officers. Daigle was joined by 2 officers, Fabrice Gavaudin and Rob Nickerson. The 3 followed the gunman as he headed towards a house on Broomfield Court, where 5 other officers were positioned and waiting. The RCMP was keeping their eye on Bork while they waited for the police dog services, who were supposed to be arriving within the next few minutes. At about 7:46 p.m., while heading towards a backyard, Bork opened fire. Allegedly, it was during these bursts of shots that he heard one of the officers yell, "Hey!" He began to shoot at Gavaudin, firing 3 shots, all of which missed. Gavaudin ran away and quickly radioed to the other officers, telling them that he was being shot at. He was then hit twice in the torso, and sadly was killed almost immediately. His body was recovered a few minutes later, and officers dragged him to a nearby garage and attempted to revive him using CPR. After shooting Gavaudin, Bork fled from the woods and emerged from the forest where he continued walking down the street. Kerry Fitzpatrick, another resident of the trailer park, ran outside after the first shots rang out. He asked his neighbor what the gunman looked like, and after hearing the description, Fitzpatrick had a hunch that the shooter was Bork. The 2 were former co-workers, so Fitzpatrick felt that he could be onto something. He rushed to Bork's trailer to confirm his theory. There, he found the front door open, and when looking inside, he noticed that the gun cabinet was left ajar. 2 minutes after he fatally shot Gavaudin, Constable David Ross encountered Bourke while driving a police SUV down the road. Ross immediately pulled his service pistol and accelerated the vehicle towards the gunman. Bourke turned his attention to the quickly approaching vehicle as Ross opened fire, shooting twice through the windshield. He was met with returning fire from Bourke, who shot 6 rounds from his M14 towards his direction. Ross was shot twice in his hand and left shoulder. Unfortunately, he was then fatally shot in the head. Most believe that Ross was attempting to subdue the gunman by hitting him with the vehicle, or at least that he was trying to get closer to Bourke in order to have a better shot. Around 7:50 p.m., a civilian was on the phone with 911 while following the shooter. They were reporting to the operator on the gunman's position in order to keep police updated. Constable Martine Benoit arrived at the location given by the civilian at 7:54 p.m. Upon her arrival, Bourke began to fire at her from a wooded ditch, which actually disabled Benoit's police car, preventing her escape. She stayed in her car taking cover from the shots, unable to return fire. Another officer, Constable Eric Stéphane J. Dubois, responded to the gunfire to assist Benoit, but was wounded during his attempt to give her additional cover. Bourke left the scene shortly after, and Dubois was able to flee from the scene to get medical help at a nearby fire station. Benoit stayed put in her patrol car, unaware that the gunman had left. Eventually, another officer was able to pick up Benoit from her disabled car. Almost immediately after this last shooting, Constable Marie-Darlene Gauguin arrived at the fire station, but was quickly fired upon while she was still in her vehicle. Gauguin was hit twice, but luckily was able to escape the scene with the assistance of Constable Donnie Robertson. Thankfully, both Dubois and Gauguin survived their gunshot wounds. It was during this time that the communication between the officers grew chaotic and confusing. The details regarding the shooting locations, the casualties, and the location of the gunman himself were unclear, with each report varying slightly. Just minutes later, at 8:04 p.m., Constable Douglas Larche, who was in plain clothes but wearing body armor and wielding a shotgun and pistol, arrived at Mailhot Avenue. Bourke spotted Larche from behind several trees and began to fire at him. He shot 4 times towards Larche, who was subsequently wounded. Larche returned fire with his service pistol, shooting towards Bourke 7 times. Sadly, Larche was fatally wounded when he was shot in the neck while attempting to take cover behind his vehicle. Nearby residents caught this firefight on camera, the whole ordeal lasting about 70 seconds. Bourke then fled this scene, making his way into the woods behind Isington Street. The last sighting of him was near Ryan Street and Wheeler Boulevard. The local hospital went into code orange around 8:30 that night, which means that they were preparing for mass casualties to come in. The facility also went into lockdown during this time. Later into the night, reports came out that 3 RCMP officers had lost their life, while 2 others were hospitalized with non-life-threatening injuries. According to some witnesses, Bourke had spoken with some residents while he was lying in wait, but that he hadn't shot any of them before leaving. Some other reports say that Bourke waved civilians away as they attempted to help the injured officers. An eyewitness stated that Bourke told her, "Don't worry, I'm not out to kill civilians. I'm only after government officials." This area of Moncton was in complete lockdown while they attempted to apprehend the gunman. All entrances to the lockdown area were sealed. At the time of the shooting, no one knew who the gunman was. It was only when family and friends of Bourke recognized him from pictures circulating on the news and social media that his identity was uncovered. His name was formally broadcasted to the locals around 11:15 p.m., with the police stressing again to the residents that he was still on the loose and considered to be armed and dangerous. The search for the shooter bled into the next day. Up to 300 police personnel were involved in the manhunt. Bourke's location was obviously unknown, and because of that, officers were unable to set up a definitive perimeter. During this time, all officers' actions were considered to be high risk. Schools, stores, and businesses in the area were closed, and nearby residents were instructed to stay inside with their doors locked. They were also told to leave their exterior lights on and to refrain from sharing the police's movements on social media. A police helicopter equipped with thermal imaging was deployed to search the area by sky. At least 2 armored cars were borrowed by the RCMP, which were used to transport heavily armed tactical team members. a report came into police that Bork was hiding out in a nearby apartment building. More than a dozen armed officers surrounded the building, demanding for the gunman to exit. They eventually deployed a robot with a camera attached into the building to search for Bork that way. They were unable to find any signs that the shooter had been there, so they left the area. The report that prompted officers to search the building later turned out to be a false alarm. The next day, on June 6th, a resident had called in that they spotted the gunman crouched under a window in a yard located on Mecca Drive. He retreated back into the woods after he was spotted. Police rushed to apprehend Bork, and thankfully they were able to do so without any further gunfire. A witness claimed that she heard screaming for about 5 minutes before she heard Bork yell, "I'm done!" He then surrendered to the police. He was unarmed at the time of his arrest, but the authorities did find several weapons at the scene. This arrest ended the near 28-hour manhunt and lockdown. Following his arrest, Bork told police that he was originally planning to target the oil industry by setting fire to several local gas stations, as well as shooting people at random. This plan was aborted, because according to Bork, his bicycle was having issues at the time. It also came out that while Bork had purchased his guns legally, his firearms license was actually expired at the time of the shootings. Bork, after his arrest, admitted full responsibility for the deadly events of June 4th. He claimed that these attacks were committed in an attempt to spark a rebellion against the Canadian government. He viewed it as corrupt, oppressive, and a system that only valued the wealthy at the expense of other citizens. On June 6th, Bork made his first court appearance at a courthouse located in Moncton. There, he was charged with 3 counts of first-degree murder, as well as 2 counts of attempted murder. Bork also formally confessed to the shootings on videotape during a one-on-one interview on June 6th. In this interrogation, he also admitted that he only surrendered because he was tired and thirsty, as he had run out of water during the manhunt. The interviewer asked him about his food supply, and Bork was quoted saying, "I had a couple rations, Ritz crackers, granola bars. As for water, I just had a pop bottle." When asked if he would go back and change the events of that day if he could, Bork said, No, all except for the fact that I would have brought some more water." On July 3rd, 2014, Bork appeared again briefly in a Moncton courthouse. His next appearance was set for July 31st, after he underwent a psychiatric assessment that his lawyer requested. The result of this assessment was that Bork would be fit to stand trial. A little over a week later, on August 8th, Bork entered guilty pleas for all 5 charges. On October 27th, he issued an apology to the families of the 3 officers he had killed. A few days later, on October 31st, Bork was handed down a life sentence for the murders, as well as the attempted murders, without the possibility of parole for 75 years. In Canada, there is an enactment which was put out in 2011 that gave the courts the option to pursue consecutive sentences in cases which featured multiple murders. This was viewed as the harshest punishment given since the abolition of capital punishment in Canada, which happened in 1976. There were several early warning signs exhibited by Bork, including his behavioral problems. His downward spiral appears to have begun more than 2 years before the incident. He grew increasingly fixated on war, and also the right to bear arms. One of Bork's former co-workers claimed, quote, "He's always seemed to have a problem with authority, issues with parents, bosses, police, etc." Bork reportedly had anti-government and anti-authority views, and even talked about killing others along with himself. Bork has also spoken with his friends about the apparent looming apocalypse, expressing his desire to live off the grid. He was a regular marijuana smoker, but his friends worried during this time that maybe Bork had begun to use harder drugs, and that they might be contributing to his increased paranoid thoughts. Just 2 days prior to the shootings, Bork ranted to his father about all authority figures. It was during this conversation that he was described as becoming paranoid. One day after the shooting, a local firearm and outdoor supply store called World's End Warehouse put out a statement confirming that Bork was personally known by their employees, but that he had never been a customer and never purchased a firearm or ammunition from them. One of Bork's friends recalled an incident that took place on a camping trip with multiple co-workers. He claimed that Bork brought his rifle on the trip, without ammunition, which he held onto the whole night while drinking. His friend stated, quote, "That kind of freaked us out, so we didn't invite him next time." Bork's social media was also littered with images and posts about the right to bear arms, and also multiple anti-police posts. On the day of the shooting, an image was added to his Facebook page containing a quote from Dave Chappelle. The quote reads, "You ever notice how a cop will pull you over for a light out, but if your car is broken down, they drive right past you?" Some of his other posts read, "Free men do not ask permission to bear arms, and militia is only a bad word if you're a tyrant." While most of these social media posts aren't necessarily major red flags that someone might go on a murderous rampage in and of themselves, paired with his behavioral problems that he exhibited to people in his life, it does definitely heighten the concern. It's unclear if any safety concern reports were ever filed regarding Bork and his firearm possession, but the local police have since stated that they had not received any concerns about him and that he was unknown to them. In Canada, there's a program called the Canadian Firearms Program, which allows individuals to submit a report if they are concerned about the mental state or intentions of someone who owns a gun. If there is a report filed, police will investigate the situation and make a call to take a person's firearms based on their findings. Some speculate that this attack might even be a form of revenge on the RCMP force. A man named Dan Levesque had been recently shot 4 times by 2 officers on July 13, 2013. RCMP officers responded to a call complaining of a man armed with a knife near the Moncton Coliseum. According to police, when Levesque was found, he was acting aggressively and ignored the orders to drop the knife. After being shot, Levesque did succumb to his wounds. Many people in the community were outraged by this event. While it could be the case that Bork was seeking justice for Levesque, it doesn't help or change the fact that 3 innocent and dedicated officers had their lives cut short. Constable Fabrice Georges Gévaudan was 45 at the time of his death. He was actually born in France and ended up joining the RCMP after he gained Canadian citizenship. He graduated from the training academy in 2008 and went on to work in general policing duty. Gévaudan was an amazing husband to his wife and was also said to be a proud and loving father to his stepdaughter. He loved to be active, he was a trained diver, and also really enjoyed running. Gévaudan was reportedly hardworking and extremely optimistic. Though he saw many of the unfortunate sides that came along with his line of work, he always kept a positive attitude. He took his career very seriously, but he was also described to have a robust sense of humor. Gévaudan left behind his wife and young stepdaughter. Constable Dave Joseph Ross was 32 years old when he was killed. He was originally from Victoriaville, Quebec, but upon graduating the training academy in 2007, he was posted to the Kodiak Detachment Depot in New Brunswick. Ross became a police dog services handler and loved his canine partner, Danny. Ross had a great love for dogs, with German Shepherds being his favorite breed. He also had a passion for the outdoors, including his love of tracking and hunting game. Ross was a husband to his wife, Rachel, and he was also a devoted father to his young son, Austin. He and his wife were also expecting their second child 3 months later. Constable Douglas James Larsh, who was 40 when he was killed, joined and graduated from the RCMP Training Academy in 2002. He mainly worked highway patrol and general policing duty, but he was also an investigator with the Kodiak General Investigation Section, and more recently, the Kodiak Major Crime Unit. In 2007, Larsh received a commander's commendation for saving the life of a 2-week-old infant. Larsh is described as an incredible father to his children. He truly had a passion for his family and was also reportedly an extraordinary husband. He was also very active, running in many races including a marathon, several half marathons, 15Ks, 10Ks, and 5Ks. Larsh truly sounds like he was a loving and selfless person. He would often do presentations at his daughter's schools and daycare in uniform, and would also bring his police car. He wanted to show children that police were there to protect them. Larsh is survived by his wife of 12 years, as well as his 3 young daughters, who were 9, 8, and 4 at the time of his death. A regimental funeral was held for the 3 slain victims at the Moncton Coliseum, and close to 3,000 police officers and other mourners were in attendance. A fund was set up called the RCMP Foundation, and it was for people to donate to the families of the killed victims and injured officers. A monument featuring statues of Constables Gévaudan, Ross, and Larsh was put up in honor of the lives they lost. It is located in Riverfront Park off Assumption Boulevard in Moncton. The families of the 3 victims were also included during the making of the sculptures. They were taken to the artist, Morgan McDonald's foundry, and they were able to discuss the project and also to work with clay. The monument also features large maple leaves surrounding the statues. 1,500 people turned out to provide impressions of their thumbprints, which were later cast into the bronze leaves. In 2017, a judge in New Brunswick claimed that the RCMP violated the Canada Labour Code by failing to equip officers with the tools and training they would need to deal with an active shooter situation. Many believe that had the officers been equipped with heavier arms, it would have made an immense difference. In the end, the RCMP was fined a total of $550,000. In late 2020, Bork was taken to the hospital after he overdosed on drugs while in prison. He was treated and was reportedly moved to an institution with a better medical facility due to safety concerns. In 2022, the Supreme Court of Canada ruled that extensively long non-parole periods were unconstitutional. Therefore, Bork's parole ineligibility was reduced from 75 years to 25 years. This means that instead of being eligible for parole at age 99 in 2089, he will be able to apply at age 49 in 2039. Even though he will be eligible for parole much sooner than he would have been, he is still sentenced to life in prison. This just means that he will technically be able to apply for parole. And unfortunately, that means the family of the victims will have to relive that day much sooner than expected. Thankfully, from what I've read, Canada is extremely unlikely to grant his parole request. This shooting was devastating to the whole community of Moncton, and even to the whole country. The officers that were tragically killed will continue to be remembered for their devotion and bravery. The family of these victims will never truly get over the pain of losing their loved ones. Please remember to keep the victims and families in your thoughts. Thank you so much for watching this entire video. I hope you found this case as interesting and devastating as I did. Please leave a comment with your thoughts on this one, and I'll see you on the next one.